can we get an insider look to what's in your finance tech stack? Have you guys started exploring AI use cases?
Oh my gosh. If I could have done something faster while we were building things, it would have been hire a tax leader a little bit earlier. It's like hard for me to believe that there's a world where like I wouldn't need a spreadsheet. It's almost like your love language a little bit. I mean, if I could wave a magic wand and have everyone within my organization and everyone that I would ever hire feel that way, like I think that we would run this thing so freaking efficiently.
Hello, everyone. This is the Lumera podcast. My name is Soumya, and today's guest is Praveer Melwani. He is currently the CFO of Figma. But Praveer, why don't you do a quick intro for those of our listeners who haven't met you or know you yet?
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Samya. Yes, right. CFO over here at Figma. Been at the company now for about 8 years. And then prior to joining, spent time in a few different companies. Started my career in banking at Dropbox, worked at a company called NerdWallet prior to joining Figma. And actually, Samya and I were just going back and forth. We're both from Toronto. So graduated just outside of Toronto and moved out here in the summer of 2012.
Oh my God. I moved here on a secondment with EY. It was supposed to be like a 12, 18-month situation.
Yeah.
They would ship Canadians down to the US during busy season in the
Yep.
audit firms because, they just didn't have enough people here and there was a lot of business. I stayed here for one winter. So I moved here in November. And of course, I moved from Toronto. So it was glorious here compared to like the weather my friends and family were having back in Canada.
Yeah.
And I actually quit EY 6 months after moving here and moved to a tech company. And I've never looked back.
That sounds really similar to what my brother did, but he was at EY, did a secondment, ended up out in Amsterdam, and has never looked back. I think it's like 7, 8 years later.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's just, I couldn't look back for two reasons. Like one, I don't think I could go back to audit after getting a taste of like working in industry. And second, I just fell in love with, I say it's partly EY's fault. They put me up in a beautiful apartment on like Pine and Market with like a view of the bay and the Bay Bridge. And I was like, like, I don't know, 23. I was very young at the time. And I was like, this is insane. Like, I'm never going anywhere. Yeah, we're still in San Francisco, like more than a decade later. So you started in investment banking and you were at Dropbox in, some of the earlier times of Dropbox. How would you say those experiences shaped your approach when you came to Figma? You were the first finance hire, right? At
Yeah.
Figma. What do you think you brought from your previous experiences to Figma?
Well, so when I was at Dropbox, we were about 400-ish people. The company was just about to roll out their Dropbox for Business product, or it maybe had been out there for a couple of years before that, but they were just starting to scale the sales effort. And the finance team at the time was run by a leader named Ajay Bashi, who eventually became the CFO, who took the company public. And they just did such a fantastic job of bringing like-minded people from all sorts of finance backgrounds, either directly from banking or venture or PE or hedge funds or whatever it was, and trusted them to be the individuals to go and figure things out, partnering with the business, not really necessarily knowing where to go, but using the intuition and sort of structured thinking and first principles thinking to figure it out. And so the things that I've always held true to myself is I don't actually think a lot of the core parts of operating require the existing set of experience of having kind of been there, done that. Yes, there's going to be room for specialists at the right points in time, but someone who's inquisitive and can ask good questions and generally is able to reason through things is able to be successful. And so while I was able to bring with me an understanding of, okay, how does an org get structured? How do the decisions tend to get made? What are the various sets of personas that are relevant? A lot of things, candidly, we're figuring it out on the fly. But I was lucky to have the Rolodex of individuals that I could call on that I'd spent time with working with in various places. Or I think the folks at Figma had done a really good job building an ecosystem of people that wanted to candidly really help us move forward, and were very much willing to partner with us along the way.
That is so important to, what I understood from what you just said was it's not so much the playbook you bring, but it's that experience of first principles thinking and being able to like kind of fundamentally understand what is happening in a situation and like come up with a solution that makes sense. That is really cool. And also like, in the companies I've worked at, what I've seen really be successful. But side note, I feel like you guys had a little bit of Dropbox finance mafia going. And I've always wanted to ask Ajay, like, what was the magic? How did you literally find this super talent dense people in finance. Like I've worked, of course, with Brad at OpenAI and Stacy.
Yep.
I don't know if you and Stacy overlap, but
Yeah,
she's
Stacy was my
amazing.
direct manager for a little bit. Yeah.
Oh my God. I
Yeah.
am a big Stacey fan. And of course, there's you. But if you think about like kind of where have all the people in that period of Dropbox finance landed across the industry? And I feel like all of you are off doing amazing things, which is really fantastic to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny. And so it was Brad, myself, and another guy named Michael Meow kind of started at the same time, all like same sort of class of analysts that started at Dropbox. So Michael leads the finance team over at Glean, and then Brad obviously has had a fantastic journey at OpenAI. I think what was interesting at the time is like they did a good job just following the typical playbook of recruiting for folks that were coming out of banking undergrad, or rather not undergrad, but the banking background. And so they went through the process of working with all of the recruiting agencies that would have typically been serving the analyst community and saying, okay, rather than going to a PE firm or a venture firm, when I remember so vividly when I got the email from a recruiter being like, hey, would you like to work at Dropbox? And these are the types of things that you'd be working on. And I think the moment I stepped into that office, I was like, why would I look anywhere else? And there just weren't that many other large, growing, well-known brands that you could go and tell your mom what the heck the company does that were here in San Francisco in, I guess it was like it was around like 2013-ish time. So a lot of stuff was really picking up, but there just weren't a lot of like talent dense teams in San Francisco proper. And so when you found one, you kind of wanted to bend over backwards to make it yours and be there and be part of it. And I think like then began to attract other likes. And the group just had such a really good reputation across the company that we were all able to work on really cool things. And I think candidly also, it wasn't just our core finance team. I think it was all parts of the organization. And so when that organization starts to splinter and ends up in different parts of the valley, I think we all tend to find each other in different ways. I was looking at Figma. I think we've got like 65, 70 ex-Dropboxers at the company, and we're like
Oh my
1,700
gosh.
people. It's just kind of wild.
That's amazing. I
Yeah.
love that. So let's come back to, so you've been at Figma 8 years, and of course you've seen this, incredible growth and rise of the company overall. But when you joined Figma, they were much smaller, right? So tell me a little bit about that. Like why did you decide to go to Figma?
So before Figma, I was working at a company called NerdWallet. I was there for about 6 months. I joined with this understanding or with this desire to rinse and repeat a lot of what I had felt at the early days of Dropbox. For better or for worse, I think I ended up in a spot about 6 months later when the company was going through a restructuring, and I was one of the last folks into the team and one of the first folks out. And I used that opportunity going through that sort of layoff to say, okay, well, what are the things I'm really excited about and what are the things I really want to prioritize? And I talked to a whole bunch of folks that I knew who knew me well. And candidly, I was just tired of working for other people. I wanted to go somewhere where I was going to be the person that could make a decision. And I mean, I think that was like, I don't know, it was a weird thing to feel that when you're like 25, 26 years old. Felt like I could bet on myself. And so for me, I wanted to go and figure out, okay, well, what sort of seed Series A style company could I join that would give me that autonomy to go and run? And then also like what types of businesses out there that I can intimately understand and tell my mom about and also kind of just have a lot of fun with. And I think I hadn't really run a process for myself to go and find that before. And so I talked to 30 odd different companies, met a whole bunch of different people all over a few months span because my visa was expiring. And I remember meeting the folks at Figma. They were about 25 people, just
Wow.
about to turn on monetization in the product. And I remember thinking, okay, well, if this works out, fantastic. It'll be like really, 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 really great for me. If not, it's a really cool story where joined the company as they were going through this transition. I will learn a lot, because of the 25 people, I want to say like 20 of them were engineering product design. And so there's just not a lot of people that were going to have similar swim lanes to me. I was just really excited to go and test myself. We had a COO at the time who was trying to build out a little bit more of the business function. And I joined as an individual contributor. And I said, I will put my head down. I finance accounting a little bit and can put my arms around it. But my passion is going to be to throw my hand out to do anything that kind of comes up. And I mean, you fast forward 8 years and a lot of those opportunities presented itself. Yeah, I could not have predicted that I would still be be here 8 years later, candidly.
That is incredible. One, I'm super inspired by the idea that you just bet on yourself and you said, I can do this, I'll figure it out. That is amazing. And it probably paid a lot of dividends over the 8 years as completely new situations came your way. And that like mindset really is what carries you through. But one thing that you said, this is actually the second time you said it, which is like a business that I understand really well, something that I can explain to my mom about. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on, as somebody's thinking about what startup do I go join as a finance person, as an accounting person, how important do you think that is? Like,
Yeah, that's a me thing. It's because I love to be able to come in and not stay in the finance lane. I want to be able
yeah.
to go and sit next to our product team and say like, look, this is how I feel working within the product, or have you thought about X, Y, and Z ways of going to market in a slightly different way? And I'm sure you can figure it out for all sorts of different business models and different products, but for me, it was just it's so important that I wanted to have a loud voice in different ways. Me personally, I found the benefit of being able to relate both to the problem that we're serving and then also to the product team. We're a product led organization through and through. And so I know from the very beginning that in order for me to have a loud voice, that I would need to have an appreciation and a strong understanding of how they think about the world.
That's super interesting. When you said that, it got me thinking, like, did I have a heuristic like that? And I think my common thread is I picked companies to work at where I had a deep understanding of the customer persona because I was a customer of their
Yeah.
product. Like at Square, actually in university in Canada, I had a side business. I used to be a henna artist for Indian
Hmm.
weddings and stuff. And for the longest time, Square wasn't available in Canada. So like I still had to like rely on cash payments. And when they finally launched, my ticket size went up significantly because people don't have more than say 20, $40 in their hand in cash. But when you say you can take credit cards, it like I was suddenly getting like $75, $100 like designs. And it was just like, oh my God, this is like a game changer. So when I left EY, I was like hell bent. I'm like, I don't care. Give me any job. I just want to work at this company. And same thing with Rippling. Like, I was a power user of the product because of like who they sell to, of course,
Yeah.
like ChatGPT. So it's interesting that, I'm not like as business savvy, kind of as broadly as you probably are. But for me, just like that obsession with, I know exactly what the customer needs allows me to do the same thing and
Yeah.
like, kind of exit the accounting swim lane. And I think it makes life a little more interesting when
Yeah.
you're when you're in the accounting finance team.
Totally. And I think like if you surround yourself with people on your team too that feel similar, like feel that same energy and passion, I think they too get like intimately involved in the business and want to figure it out in different ways. Like I remember one of the first hires I had on our biz ops team. He was a guy who had gone to college with a friend of mine. He messaged me and he was like, "Hey, I have a finance background, but like, look, I have this really cool idea for a bachelor party app I really want to create." And so that was our conversation. It wasn't necessarily about, "Hey, I need a job," but "Oh my gosh, I love this tool and I'm really curious to learn more about it." And obviously that snowballed into a role, but it is pretty cool when you can surround yourself with people that are like mission oriented because they come up with just fantastic ideas.
Totally. I think we're also lucky to have a culture in these like kind of new age tech companies where they're open to listening to ideas wherever it comes from. I used to audit TD Bank in Canada, and like you can have amazing ideas, but like by the time anything happens to it, like you'll probably fizzle out because you lose steam. And I never take it for granted that this culture is something that is super special for crazies that want to go outside their swim
Yeah.
lane. Okay, so 25 people when you joined. What are some moments when you were building out finance at Figma where you said, wow, things are just completely broken because we've kind of outgrown our existing process or system or solution? Can you think of a few points where, these were like challenges as you're building up the finance infrastructure? Because I'm assuming there wasn't much in place when you joined.
Yeah, when I joined, we were working with an outsourced bookkeeper. We were on NetSuite. We were like making the push to move on to NetSuite already, but the business was simple. We were basically paying payroll on autopay, and we had AWS as our largest expense plus like our rent, and so there wasn't any revenue coming in, so there wasn't a lot of complexity there. You fast forward about like a year, and so we were still credit card only, online only payments for our pro business, but I had this growing list of folks that I was managing in a spreadsheet that I had to send them invoices and figure out, okay, did they pay me my bank account eventually? So it was like, I remember this so vividly. It was like we began charging July 2017, and I remember having an email my first or second day from the folks at Microsoft being like, hey, look, we're not going to pay you through Stripe. So you have to figure out how you're going to collect it. We would love to use your service, but you got to figure it out. And over the years, we ended up having like, I mean, over that, it wasn't even over the first year. It was even over the first few months. I had multiple instances of folks from larger businesses like that reaching out, and I would just have to figure it out. Okay, well, this is like how we're going to accept a direct wire transfer or checks that were coming through. The first part of me wanting to go and build out our accounting function was just like, look, there's just a lot of transactional volume of stuff that's starting to pick up. I can't be the individual who's going and chasing payroll stubs. I can't be the individual who's going to chase our customers in all the ways that I would love to. And we were about to release our enterprise version of or rather, we called it an organizations product, which was our sort of step up from our pro business. Mm-hmm. And we recognized that that was going to come with like the ability to give people payment terms and the ability to have things a little bit more on your cycle. And that was going to take more out of my time, our team's time. And we needed to start to figure out how do we scale this. And so while we continued to do it over on Stripe, we needed to figure out, okay, well, like who's actually going to go and check this high volume of transaction payments to ensure that we don't have any outstanding collections or any outstanding risks. So that from a customer perspective was probably my first place where I was breaking, where I just needed more support on the AR side. Then we got to a place of scale on the people side, where we were not just in the US, we were in multiple geographies, and managing payroll became a little bit more of an issue. And so we then started to build out our payroll function. And then we started to figure out, okay, well, we want to go through our first audit. We didn't have like a lot of folks on the technical accounting side. And so actually I reached out to a good friend of mine from Dropbox. She reached out to me and was like, hey, if you guys ever hire for this, I'd love to join. So she actually is our assistant controller today, and Melissa's absolutely fantastic. But like without her, we wouldn't have really scaled that. And so, yeah, I think it's been places where the product has matured in quite a unique way, where the breadth of customers we're now supporting has required us to add more folks, or the complexity of the business as we're running it, either in different geographies or either in different regions, as well as different ways of needing to think about how we're meeting our vendors in the right ways, that required us to just add more capacity in that way. And so, yeah, I mean, I've tried over the years to keep it as streamlined as possible, but like there are going to be these moments where you can lean into tools as much as you want, but at some point, like sometimes it's just a matter of like even a generalist capability in order to keep it going that allowed us to just keep the lights on.
You're at a 7-day close, which is pretty impressive for the scale you're operating at. If you, say, wanted to close in 4 days, what do you think would have to change dramatically? Where does a lot of the manual work still exist for the team?
It's probably a better one for chief accounting officer, if I'm very candid. I think that like the transaction volume that we have always means that there's a lot of risk on the revenue side. And so I think we all spend a decent amount of time ensuring that it's like really, really buttoned up is on that side of it. But candidly, they're pretty quick in how quickly they can turn things. I think we still end up chasing a bunch of accruals as with everyone else. And so I think that there's always room for us to improve the speed and pace of that. But candidly, like I feel pretty good at the 7-day mark. Obviously, there's always things that we can do a little bit faster, but we'd obviously then have to just get into a cadence of feeling like we can start to book some of these earlier accruals and then close our books a little bit earlier. But that's another one that I should probably follow up with after having a more detailed conversation with them.
Yeah, it is interesting. It's funny because at OpenAI, when I joined, they had been doing 8-day closes. And of course, like close broke entirely when we launched ChatGPT, right? So we kind of had to rebuild that 8-day close. And then my boss said, okay, let's do a 5-day close. So we kind of scrambled and like got the team to a 5-day close. But as soon as we hit that OKR, the CFO is like, okay, so this year we'll do 4-day. And I'm just like, oh my God, like, there's only so much we can squeeze. But that's always my initial reaction. But, once you kind of start thinking about it and think about, okay, if what does a 4-day close mean? Maybe revenue needs to close on day one. What does revenue close on day one mean? You don't actually have time to do anything manually. So like you kind of start building on every time you come to like the long tail of that process, you have to like squash it. So it's definitely a bit of like whack-a-mole until you get to a happy place. One other question I had was when you talked about pigment, you said, there's this kind of balance between doing things in Sheets and doing things in planning software. I haven't worked at a company that used Pigment. Most of the companies I've worked at have, the finance teams have implemented Anaplan. What's super interesting to me is like a few months after Anaplan gets, you go live and you connect it to NetSuite and it's supposed to be beautiful and that's where you do everything. It slowly kind of goes to this place where people are still doing everything in Google Sheets. And then once they have a lockdown model, they use Anaplan as the place to store it. I am curious, like, to hear your experience. Like, is this what's happening? Maybe is it a function of the business changing so quickly that like it's almost too slow to do this in FP&A tools? If you could build like a magical FP&A tool where you didn't have to do this, where you could do some of that
Mhm.
iterative work inside, what would it need to have for you to like kind of say, I don't need spreadsheets for this?
It's like hard for me to believe that there's a world where like I wouldn't need a spreadsheet because there's so many small things that I mean, I myself just will like love to go and tinker and check my own ideas. And I think it's just such a fantastic tool to give you control and just like iterate a little bit. It's almost like a blank canvas for me as a spreadsheet. It's almost like your love language a little bit. I think but your instinct is right. I think we're actually how we stepped our process. We first implemented Pigment on the expense side and headcount side because I think to the way you're describing it, you're much more likely to have consistent ways to forecast those parts of your business
Yeah.
earlier. I'm even thinking about like when we were in spreadsheets, like very rarely am I going to go and change the build there. Maybe I'm tweaking an assumption here and there, but like it's not that different. I guess for our business, the only part of, or there's a few areas where I'll still ask the team for more detail is on like our infra side. So, I mean, AWS is a very, very large vendor for us, as now are going to be some of these frontier models as we really dip our toe into more AI forward offerings. And I still want to understand the drivers for that and be able to go and change and manipulate those in different places. And then I think on the top line side, I mean, we've shipped and built products so quickly that it's really difficult for me to say that I'm in a place of comfort where I never want to go and change the forecasting methodology. I feel like teammate may not love it about me, but like I'm constantly looking for ways to get even tighter and looking for different signals. And like I was sharing, there's just so much data that we track and there's so many unique ways that you can get to an end state that not feeling the need and desire to iterate just feels like you're missing something. So that's why we spend a lot of our time just having these intra-quarter models or monthly models that live on the side to see if we can get tight to validate our overall high level sort of set of assumptions. And so if I'm thinking about like the perfect FP&A model for me, it's like infinitely flexible, but doesn't break and takes and digests all the information and different sets of signals that we have in a way that it as well understands the context of how they're all interrelated. And this only really works if you have like a perfect data set under the hood, where I just don't believe that we have perfect data, like
Yeah.
the amount of times that we found, oh shoot, we've had a bunch of spam signups here, or like, oh crap, like we made a mistake in our tracking here. Like I think that, I mean, so you would have to add so much context to the system for it to be able to spit out something for me that would feel like it's trustworthy. And I'm still finding this even with our team as we work through stuff today. It's like, oh, well, what happened in 2011? Do we remember the nuance of why this went up? Like, do we remember like what was actually going through it? And it really does require us to like annotate really deeply, like really showcase like we have an understanding of how things changed. And I would want the system to be able to really do that for me in some unique way, so that when I'm going and prompting it in some way to help me understand a very sensitivity case, it can do that like it's almost the back of their hand. And maybe that future exists, I don't know yet, but for me I think it's still something that we're searching for, and still love the flexibility that we can get in a spreadsheet to iterate on some of this stuff. And
It's so interesting how you said, spreadsheet is like our love language for finance people. I've been thinking a lot about how good AI is at coding and why there's such a disconnect where finance folks are like not quite able to use that coding capability in our real world jobs. Because in theory, like you could get so much done and like, big data processing. And I'm kind of convinced now, like I've been kind of hacking on a product with a former coworker, and I'm convinced that it's not actually the coding capabilities, but it's the UX that you give. And
Mhm.
I've been pushing for us to have a spreadsheet like UX, because we think and work in spreadsheets, and if you can describe the logic in a spreadsheet format, it feels really intuitive to
Yeah.
finance folks, where you don't have to even think that you're asking for Python. That just can happen in the background. So that's the dream. We'll
Yeah.
see where
No,
we
I
get.
mean, look, we are a business that encourage people to go and differentiate their brands using their UX, and so I feel that so intimately. We kind of talked about it across our team at one point, and we're just like, what is the role of design in an AI forward world? It's almost like it has to serve as this translation layer. It has to start to be able to provide an end user with the trust of the underlying system. Because if you almost just start to think about like what we would tolerate as an output, like, do you have a higher bar for excellence for an AI output than an individual, because like you can give an individual some grace to make a mistake, but if the system is giving you something that you don't believe, then you maybe throw out everything. And I think your point is right on being able to showcase the work in some way. What I love about a spreadsheet is it's auditable, and it can take me back to the core underlying data set that people are making assumptions around, and I can really trace people's thinking in some way. In the same way, we have a product, we rolled it out called Figma Make, which allows people to kind of go prompt to initial prototype in a matter of minutes, that references a lot of the sort of existing sets of systems that you could already be building with. And it was interesting sitting in one of those product reviews, and they made an intentional decision to allow to almost stream in the code as the AI was kind of thinking, just as a tool to allow people to realize that, okay, wow, this is actually code that's being generated behind the scenes. It's something that I can trust. I can go and audit, and this is why it's taking some time, versus just having a blank page spinner before you actually output something. So I don't know. I just found it fascinating. I hadn't really thought about it until I sat in that product review.
Yeah, no, well, I want to go check this out for
Yeah.
myself, because if there's something I like doing, I'm not an engineer, but I always participated in hackathons and hack weeks at the companies I've been at, because I'm just like, this is like, put a product hat on and build something.
Yeah.
It's super interesting. I feel like a lot of the products we use, they've all kind of made a push to be AI forward and AI integrated. But I'm a little disappointed that what that looks like in most products is they've kind of slapped on a chatbot to their tool. And,
Mm-hmm.
chat obviously was like a great interface for ChatGPT, and like it took off, and there's like a great proof point. But for, say, finance, like chat is just not the best interface you could have. Like a spreadsheet or a table, when I think about how do I understand like my own personal credit card expenses or something else, like I don't want to chat about it, I
Mm-hmm.
just want to see it. And I think the role of design is actually, I don't think it's going away anytime soon. In fact, it's like,
Yeah.
what other cool interfaces can you design up to really use the capabilities of AI? So hopefully
Yeah.
it's kind of the start of a
Yeah.
new different way to think about
Well,
design.
it's definitely the way that we feel. I mean, if you were to talk to Dylan, our CEO, he describes it as almost we're in the MS-DOS eras of what it will be like to interact with AI. I think, like, you're
Yeah.
right. Like, a chatbot today is one interface, but like there's going to be so many different unique ways, and there's going to be times we don't even know that under the hood, to your point, what you're interacting with is an AI model in some way. And I think, like, I mean, some of our favorite like features are ones that you just don't even understand what's going on under the hood. And so Google autocomplete when you're in an email, like where you can tab over and finish something like that. That is something that you don't really imagine what's powering it under the hood, but like it's just it's right there when you need it. It's exactly what you want. We've kind of thought about it in the way that we build product as well. Like if you're basically if you're designing a frame and you are let's say it's like a restaurant app, and you're kind of replicating the number of cards on that restaurant app, we can detect for you, okay, well, you probably want to have unique information on like the name of a restaurant, like what is the rating of it, the distance, so it actually looks and feels a little bit more real. And if we can detect that that's your intention, let us go and make that recommendation for you in the context of what you're building. You don't actually have to go and prompt a chatbot, like put like dummy data there, but like, why can't we just create recommendations in the right places for you at the right moments in time.
Right. And like that's where the magic comes, right? It's like when you feel like, wow, this thing is really kind of understanding my intent before
Yeah.
I've even asked for it.
Yeah.
Interesting thing for accounting and finance though is like I think there's a balance of magic where things are happening automatically for you versus the user being in control of what's actually happening. Because what if the magic is applying some kind of logic that you're not wanting, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's hard to discern that by just seeing the output. So it's almost like, how do you give people the ability to cook the recipes themselves, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
but then kind of maybe like help guide them along. So it's been really fun, honestly, just prototyping and trying what might stick. I might give you a demo later
I
once we
love
have
that.
something to
Yeah.
show. No, that's awesome. So I know we are running up close to time. One thing I did want to ask you is, you've made like big strides on upgrading tech stack overall. How do you think about AI? And, have you guys started exploring AI use cases? How's the team feeling about adopting AI overall?
I'm at a place now where I think parts of our challenge are like, how do you create enough space for folks who are extremely busy, have a lot going on, to feel like this is a core priority for them and like a necessary thing that they need to do as part of their day to day, And so, I mean, I think we're still so early, but like what I imagine I'm going to need to do more and more of is anytime someone has a headcount ask that they come to me about, I want to have such an intimate understanding of how every single other person is spending their time within their team before we say, okay, if this makes sense. And if you have that intimate understanding, you probably can have a good sense of the process that folks are going through and the places that feel like, okay, people are just wasting time copying and pasting things or checking things that should be automated. And so I've tried to create some of these moments within our organization where like people understand that this is like this is going to be part of our core priorities that we need to have, like we can't just throw bodies at solving problems in the same way that maybe we could have years ago. I think the sort of bar has been raised, and also like the level of investment we need to make in our team to allow them to get there has also been raised. And so we did things like, I mean, as recently as I bring my whole org together once a year. And so we brought everyone together in New York in May of this year. And we said, okay, well, many folks hadn't really messed around with ChatGPT. And so we had our ChatGPT enterprise trial going, and we had the team from OpenAI come and join us. We spent like 3 hours in a room with all 150 of us. And we said, okay, well, everyone from folks on our corporate development team to folks on our BD team to folks on our IT organization, let's all come up with ideas that we want to explore over this 3 hour time horizon. And let's see what we can output. And we given people enough training to get an understanding. We obviously felt a little bit more comfortable passing the data over because we had the benefits of the enterprise agreement in place. And it was interesting to see we had wins from a T&E team that is going and managing like a whole bunch of queries that they get. How can they go and pass a lot of the logic and information, create like an interface where anyone within the organization can come ask these questions because they don't have to then be able to like manage them one off. Or I get really strung up when numbers change on board outputs between periods. So even if our board can't see it, I want to make sure that what I've given you in May matches the same information for the same like periods that I shared with you in February. So someone on the team came up with a way where they can upload a set of assets that kind of look and diff the two. And so no one is wasting time again, going and manually checking things. So it's like, we're just scratching the surface of what is going to be possible here and what will be a priority for us. And so I get excited about, I think it's my role now to celebrate this when folks are investing in it. And so I have different ways that I do that, either through awards or monthly newsletters, or taking this all the way up to our leadership team so that they can see it and how they can drive it in their organizations. But I also think that there's something that I also need to do when I hold my leaders accountable to the way that we're building our organizations, and just having such a solid understanding of the process and people and what people are actually doing.
Yeah, it's super interesting. One, I love that you are, setting the tone at the top as the CFO of the org, because even a year ago at OpenAI on our own team, people would feel like they'd a little sheepish about saying I chat GPT'd that. And, I can see a shift happening overall as more and more enterprises want to encourage this and say it's actually okay. Obviously, like the expectation is for you to still review and edit the output before you actually ship it.
Yeah.
But if you use it to get to 80% of the way and then you had to fix the last 20%, that's still a huge time saving. So like why you go ahead and do that, and don't be
Yeah.
afraid to say that you did. That's really great. On building out a team, it actually brings me back to what you said much earlier when you were in the earlier stages, right? It's like hiring a strong generalist that's able to figure a lot of things out is probably where we're going as we think about what does growth of our teams look like over time, because now you have this like really capable assistant in many ways, but you need someone to steer the ship, so to speak, of what these things are going to do. And even for someone like I'm an accountant, CPA through and through, and like that is my core competency. I sometimes feel like saying that alone is not going to be enough in the future. If you're an accountant, you're an accountant plus maybe super savvy with data and really good at some other stuff. And I feel like these kind of cross functional competencies are going to be much more important to companies and, as people themselves too, as they're trying to upskill and kind of be ready for this next stage.
Totally resonates. And I mean, if I could wave a magic wand and have everyone within my organization and everyone that I would ever hire feel that way, like I think that we would run this thing so freaking efficiently. Yeah, some of this won't just happen magically. I think you also have to encourage it as leaders within an organization and celebrate the success. So I think it's fantastic when you can find folks that are self-motivated, but I think also we need to make sure that the learning and development of our teams is a priority right now.
Yeah, totally. And the flip side is, we have to kind of be real about the capabilities of where these things are today. Not every goal you put on your OKR list is going to be successful, because maybe like AI is not going to be able to automate your entire order to cash and you need other tools, or like maybe it only gets it right 75% of the time.
Yeah.
And I think as leaders, it's important for people to feel like it's okay to try the moonshot things. And if you only get like halfway there, that's still progress. And, I think a lot of people are almost like too scared to put these big goals, because then if you fail, then you get dinged because you failed your OKR. And it's like, you can't expect linear progress, in my opinion. And, it's really important to kind of allow for some meandering and like wins and fails. And overall, as long as we're netting towards wins, I think it's good.
Yeah. Time is our only constraint right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This has been great. I want to close with a lightning round hot take. What's a common finance practice you believe is outdated?
I think that when folks are kind of going through the process, I mean, maybe it's the checks and balances I was just describing, like the fact that people have to manually map and print out. I mean, I remember when I was in banking, you're printing out sheets of paper to make sure that things in books tie. Like I think that's way too outdated. Should not exist anymore.
Yeah. And even if today's equivalent might be like ticking and tying spreadsheets manually, like there's got to
Exactly.
be better
Yeah.
ways. Yeah. I love that. Praveer, thank you for being so generous with your time. This hour has flown by.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed getting to know you and hearing your story. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Thank you for thoughtful questions. I really enjoyed it as well.